We're doing it. All right. Well, hello. This feels new. It's been a long time since I've posted a video. Obviously, if you've been subscribed to this channel, you would know that. I want to say like 2019 was probably the last time I actually posted a video that you guys would have subscribed for, which is like me making a beat. And a lot has changed since then. And I think lately I've just kind of had the urge to pick back up. And I know a lot of you who have been subscribed have been wondering, like, what have I been doing for this last 6 years? So I want to make this relevant for like anybody who might come across this video, whether you've been subscribed or not. So I think in order to fully understand like what I've been doing and why I stopped, we've got to run it back to like why I started in the first place and like what we got to give the lore. We got to give the backstory of this channel. So for those of you who haven't been subscribed, don't know who I am, my name's Pat. I'm just a guy who started making beat videos in my room, and in 2016, my very first video went on YouTube's trending page and got like, I think now it's at like 1.5 million views, which for I think anybody, for that being the result of your first video on YouTube is pretty crazy, and I'm fully aware of that. But yeah, in light of like taking it back to where this channel started, let's run back to, I think it was September of 2016 when I first posted my first video. So where was I at that time? I had just graduated college in like December 2015, and in the process of applying to jobs, I had taken my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife. I took her camera and I was like, hey, maybe I will post a video of me making a beat. I had been making like beats for, I don't know, a couple years at that time. And I thought I got to a point where I was like, maybe I'm like decent at this. And like, if I post a video, who knows what would happen? Like maybe somebody will watch it. That's all I really did. That was my only intention in going into it, was to like, just post a video of me doing something that I do and see what happens. Like I had no plan to like, oh, I want to become a YouTuber. I want to do this, do that. It was just me doing the thing that I did normally. So yeah, I was living at my grandparents' house at the time. Was supposed to be moving to Atlanta. The job that I was going to get out there just fell through. And so whatever, I was working at a marina part-time up there and posted my first video. And about a month or so into that video being on YouTube, like I just started getting a ton of subscribers. It was crazy. Didn't know what was happening, but I just kept posting a video a week after that, and kind of rode that wave from that first video. And I would say in the matter of that first year, there was times where I was getting anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000 subscribers a day. My video views were like crazy at that time. Just staying consistent and riding that wave, it just kept running up. And eventually it got to a point where, I was doing like brand sponsorships. People started sending me stuff and I was like, this seems like I remember the first time I had somebody hit me up. It was my buddy Mick from Native Instruments. And he was like, yo, we like what you do. We want to send you this keyboard. And I thought it was a scam. I was like, this is not real. Like I'm just posting videos online and somebody wants to send me like a really nice keyboard. Like this seems scammy. But anyways, I trusted him and it was real. And that was kind of like my first experience of like, could this be something more than what I initially set out to do, which was just post a video of me doing, having fun. And yeah, so I continued doing that for a while. I'd say from like the end of 2016 through 2019 is really like when I was only focusing on YouTube. I think once the channel got to a certain point, I kind of had the realization that maybe I can turn this into a career. I don't know. Again, like I was applying to like marketing jobs and that's kind of was my plan. And this kind of just happened by accident. And I don't think I was prepared for like where it was going to go and how to take it to that next point. And so I think ultimately that's kind of where I dropped off. Like I wasn't really 100% sure how to monetize, what I was doing. I think in my head, my plan was like, okay, well, like I have this audience now. If I'm going to do production, which is really what I wanted to do, like maybe this will help me sell beats. So I tried that, was not getting traction. What I realized is that in posting videos of me making beats, I was attracting people who also wanted to learn how to make beats. And my initial thing was like, I'm just going to build an audience because then I'll be able to like have an audience to sell beats to. And that is not how it worked out. And so it was a lot of trial and error. Like, I tried doing that. I think there's a lot of people out there who like figured out selling beats before they figured out like how to get, an audience, and neither of it is easy. And I think like if you do one without the other, it's just going to be hard. Like period. And so I think I had like the social media side going for me. Like I had that down. I understood like the recipe to continue doing what I was doing. But the financial side on the back end, I had no clue. Like I didn't realize the value that having that direct connection to an audience really brought to brands. I had no idea like what the dollar amount would be to like charge for a sponsored video for anything like that. And I think like at that time it was less clear. Like people were doing it for sure. Um, I think it's just important to realize that like I stumbled upon this almost by accident, and it was not my plan. Like my plan was to go get a job in corporate, and so like figuring out how to monetize this was just like it happened. Like I was trying to do it while the thing was happening. You know what I mean? And I think to be successful, you have to be prepared. You have to be ready for that moment to come and have things in place to kind of like direct that traffic to whatever those things are, whether it's, you're actually building an audience that you want to sell beats to, whether you have kits that you want to sell, whether it's, you get into VSTs, you get into like educational content. There's a lot of ways to monetize it, and I just didn't know how to do that at the time. And I think like as I went on, um, I started taking those leaps in life. Like, remember, I was doing this for like 2 years, and I got to a certain point where I was like, okay, I got to move out of my grandparents. Like, I got to, continue moving forward in life. And I took that leap, I think, before I was really ready to take on like a lot of the financial responsibilities of doing that. And ultimately, I think it caught up with me. Initially, what was a passion for me, which was making beats, making music, turned into this thing where I was like, how much AdSense revenue can I get this month to pay my bills? And that was not a healthy way to go about doing things. I think like as a creative, like that's just not a good headspace to be in. Is like creating content strictly to like eventually pay your bills. And I know like at the moment where I kind of stopped making videos, like it was not fun for me anymore. And you can kind of tell, at least I can tell in the content that I was creating, that it was like it felt forced. Like it wasn't the content that I think made YouTube happen for me, like got me those views. And so like that on top of like needing money and like financial stability, um, ultimately forced me to go in another direction. Like I went back to square one which was like just going to get a job. That's honestly what I did. Um, I got a job in marketing, started like really at the bottom. Like I think I was making $15 an hour. And I did that for like almost 3 years. And obviously like I started making more money as the years went on. Like I'm really transparent about like money. I don't place value on somebody based off of what they like, how much money they make or anything like that. I honestly think it's a discussion that more people should have, because like you have this perception of like where somebody is at on social media. Like a lot of you might have thought that I must have been making good money off of beats and production. Like I was not. In the same respect, like I think there were a lot of moments that I look back on that should have been signals to me that this is something that you can do. And they were. It's just like I didn't know how to figure it out, and I think I was doing this by myself in a room for 2 years without like any help. And I'm not saying that to be like, oh, like feel bad for me. Like there's a lot of people who figure it out on their own. I just think for me, it caught up to me eventually. And yeah, so I went to corporate, and that's ultimately what I've been doing for the last 6 years. Like I've worked for some really big brands. I'm wearing one of them right now. And I've learned the ins and outs of like marketing. And while that skill is like something I know now that I'm good at and I can always fall back on, should I need to, that is not ultimately what brings me happiness and joy in life. And it's kind of crazy. Like when you've been in that environment, like people are really good at what they do, but when you start building these like personal connections with people in the corporate world and you start talking about things like outside, like real life, you realize that there's a lot of people that are doing that just for the money, and it's good for some people. And I've just realized it over time that it's not for me. Again, it's a skill that I know I can do now, and I can make money from it. But nothing like no amount of money that I've made in corporate, and for reference, I'm up to like six figures. Not that that matters, but again, like I think it's important to again talk about the financial side of things, because to some people that might be a lot of money, to some people that's not, and that's fine. That's all based on like where you're at. But I think for me, it's a lot of money. I think it's something you can easily live comfortably off of. But that doesn't like it doesn't make me happy. You know what I mean? Like no amount of money that I've made in corporate has made me happier than the moment I've posted a video and like feel that like I've put something out into the world that like some people will like, some people will take things out of, some people might not like, but like seeing the reaction from everybody is like that is it's hard to describe, but it's like you have like a child every time you put a video out and you're just watching it like flourish, and you never know what's going to happen from it or who's going to see it, who's going to be at the other end of the screen. You know, like even the people that I you know came in contact with when I was doing YouTube is crazy. You know, like it's wild what being yourself and putting yourself out there on the internet will like do. And I think all that to say as well, like in these past 6 years that I've been in corporate, like I've had nothing but gratitude for the people that I've met, the people that have helped me continue to grow in that career path. And I think that's why I was able to grow, just because like I've always been a real person, like the same person that you've seen on YouTube. Like that is the energy that I brought to every company that I've been with since I stopped. And I've made some like really good friends because of that. It's rare to find people who are like transparent and just like themselves in the corporate world. I think a lot of people put on like this face. It's like there's a whole lingo in the corporate world that's just like that's not how people talk like day to day. You know what I mean? So I think like just being real has helped me in everything that I've done. But ultimately, it's also made me realize like where my heart is and the path that I should be on and need to be on. But again, like I've had like some really incredible time in like these past 6 years. Like I got married, that was incredible. I've like traveled to a lot of places in the world. Some of it because of my job. Like I've been to Portugal, to Barcelona, where else? To Italy, to Mexico, South America. I've had a really good time this past 6 years in that sense, in terms of just living life and experiencing growth and just learning and just enjoying my time here. But I think a lot of things have also happened like in this past couple of months. Like honestly, like my dog died. He was my best friend. Yeah, he was with me like when I started the YouTube channel, and yeah, that was crazy for me. Yeah, it might sound crazy to like people who haven't had a pet, but when you've like made a connection with something that is like a whole other species and it's that deep, like you don't need words to communicate between each other. It's a crazy feeling. And I got him when I was like, I think I was still in college. This was like 2012 when I got Jake, my dog, and so I had him for it was just about 13 years. And to have experienced like death in that moment, when he passed that really shook me up. I think like the next couple weeks, I just realized like how those 13 years for him was like an entire lifetime, but for me, it just went by so fast, and like that kind of shook me up to be like, you need to be doing what you were meant to do and what you were put on this earth to do. Like stop wasting your time, and not to say that what I've been doing has been a waste of time. I've gotten a lot from it, but at my core, I know that it's not what makes me happy. And I've realized that the amount of effort and time that I've put into corporate to get to where I'm at, if I even put a fraction of that into my own thing, into music, into this channel, the sky is the limit. Like, I got it to where I did just posting a video, like, every once in a while, like, not great quality. You can see how poor the quality of my video was, like, videos were back in the day, especially that first one that just like took off. So yeah, I think, I've just kind of redirected where my energy should be focused to the thing that I stumbled across that ended up working, that like was kind of a signal from, the universe or whatever it is, that like this is the path. And yeah, so that's kind of where I've been these past 6 years, just living life, trying to figure things out. Yeah, I was watching an interview with Russ on, I think it was the Manager's Playbook, that just dropped like last week or something. And one of the things that like the host of that podcast mentioned, that he kind of judges an artist based off of, obviously it's like their music, but a big thing is like, how relatable are they and how likable are they? And like, is this person somebody who their fans feel that like they will be there for them, through these various phases of life, and I think that I just didn't realize what this channel was really doing when it was doing what it was doing. One of the things that I did to kind of block out the noise and potential negativity was just like, I wouldn't really get involved in like the comments that you guys were leaving on my videos. I mean, I would like in the first hour or so after I posted it, but after I posted something, it was like, okay, like on to the next one. And I think it's just because like the internet brings out the best and the worst of people, and I realized that, and like I told myself that I just wouldn't care one way or another, and the way that materialized was just like I wouldn't really go into my comments, and I think that was just more for like the mental sanity of like just stay focused, and I think a lot of people can probably relate to that and understand that. But it wasn't until like later on that when I've been posting kind of like these videos hinting that I'm coming back to YouTube, that people were saying like, I don't think you really understand how much your channel really meant to people, and how deeply you've been missed. And I didn't, like, straight up, I did not understand. I always appreciated all of you and all the subscribers so much, and all of like the the support. Like, that's ultimately why I kept doing it. I think there's just a different level that I didn't realize, that this channel meant to a lot of the people watching it, and a lot of you. Honestly, as I've gotten older, I've kind of realized that was selfish, selfish of me to have just stopped because of whatever I was going through, without realizing that, like, maybe some of my videos helped you guys get through something, or like realize, that there's a spark in music production that you wanted to get into, or whatever that is. And, yeah, I think as creators, like, we don't think about that enough. If you stop, like, you're taking away what somebody might have like relied on, on a weekly basis. I'll never forget one time I got a DM on Instagram saying that, I don't know why I'm being so emotional. Yeah, I'll never forget. I got a DM from somebody on Instagram, telling me that they were going through chemotherapy, and they would watch my videos, anytime they would go through a round of chemo, and that just helped them, get through it. And maybe I've just become more sentimental as I've gotten older, but like, having experienced loss, having friends who are now going through similar experiences in their own life, to put something out that even one person is able to get that from, that is worth more to me than like any amount of money is. And so that's kind of why I'm here now. It's like, you go through these different paths in life, I think when I stopped YouTube in 2019, that was a fork in the road, and I chose the original path that I originally was set out on, at that moment, and that's okay. Like, I did something that I needed to do, to get to a point in life where I felt I needed to be at that time, and I think like getting to where you're supposed to be in life it's never going to be linear. Maybe for some people it might be, but every decision that you make, along that way, will ultimately take you either further away from something or closer to it. But it doesn't mean that you're on a different path. It means that like maybe you were just meant to go learn something else before you come back. I think like ultimately, as long as your goal is the same thing, like what you want to get out of this life, is kind of your North Star, then like there's a lot of different ways to get there. And so yeah, like going back to money, like obviously it's important. Like you've got to pay your bills, you got to be able to, support yourself and at some point maybe a family. And I think like over time, like you'll learn the skills to do that. But at the end of the day, it's like we don't know how long we have, and I think it is so much more important than making a dollar to feel fulfilled, yourself, like in your heart, and to feel that you're doing the right thing, like you're on the right path, you're doing what you were meant to do. And I know that this is what I was meant to do. It's just that I think like again, like you see so many people kind of just going through life doing it for to make money or whatever it may be, but they're just not happy. And it's like maybe some of you guys have seen like Sailing with Phoenix, like watching him lately just like quit his job, get a sailboat, and he's like, I'm gonna sail around the world. That is incredible. Like that is like, you see how many people who like are in corporate in his comments just saying like they're living vicariously through him. Like that is ultimately what I think a lot of people want, is to just like experience life on their own terms, like not be stuck in the day to day just doing the same exact day over and over again. And I think that's another thing that really caught up with me, is like my weeks in corporate go by like this, like because every day is the same routine. It's like you wake up at a certain time, you go through your same routine, you have your calls, it's like every day's the same. So what is there about it that like differentiates one week from the next? And again, like I think for some people, like that's fine, like that might be what they're looking for, is like that routine. I understand a lot of people need that. I think everybody needs a routine to an extent, but I've realized that like 6 years can go by really fast. And in terms of like personal growth and getting as much out of life as you can while you can, corporate is really tough for me to feel that way about. Again, in the 2 years that I did YouTube, like the things that I experienced far outweigh anything I've experienced in corporate, and that just being real. So yeah, all that to say, like if you've been subscribed to my channel, whether it was from the start, whether it's from halfway through, whether it's towards the end, and you've been wondering where I'm at, like hopefully this kind of shed some light on like what I've been doing, where I'm at now. And yeah, I just want to say like I'm sorry if you felt that like I just kind of abandoned you, and wherever you were at in life that you might have relied on my videos to like look forward to, or whatever they might have served. I apologize. And again, I just hope that like people recognize that like there's a lot of things in life that like we just have to make decisions on. And that was one of them for me. Like I had to, at that moment, I felt like I had to go in a different direction for a lot of reasons, financially, mentally, physically. Like even looking back on my old videos, like I was not going to the gym. I was not taking care of myself. And, I think there's a lot that just goes into being sturdy mentally and just like as a person. And there was a lot of gaps in that when I was doing YouTube. I was young, I was out of college and just figuring things out. I hope that you can relate to, that experience in that sense. And I guess that leads me to like, what is next? Obviously, like the landscape on social media has changed a lot since I stopped. Like TikTok was not even a thing, but I think like ultimately what made it work for me in the first time around, that hasn't changed. Like whatever that is that might have connected with people, like I still have that, and yeah, like it's gonna take some time to figure out what works, but like I'm not really concerned about immediate gratification or anything. I think like I had a really interesting and unique experience in that sense, where like my very first video took off. That same experience kind of happened with Spotify when I started releasing music. I remember I made a video that was like, if I made a beat for Russ featuring Chance the Rapper, and I got so many comments in that video just saying like, release this, put this out. And so I did, and that was like my first track that I ever put out on like Spotify or any streaming platforms. And today on Spotify, that's got over 2 million streams. It's like 2.4. And to me, that's a lot. Obviously, there's other artists that, do crazy numbers. But for that to be the first thing you put out, on top of like your first video that you ever put out on YouTube getting 1.5 million views, like I realize that, more now than I did back then of how crazy that is. Yeah, I think those were all ultimately signals from the universe of like, you are on a path that you were meant to be on, because of how black and white that was. It's like there should have been no question to me if like that was the path I wanted to be on, that like stick to this. But there was a lot of, the business side and stuff that I just, again, there was gaps in me as a person. There was gaps in me, like my business acumen and like what I understood about marketing and how to monetize everything. That, hopefully now those don't exist so much, and I kind of like approach this in a different way. But yeah, my goal is to just like find that love for it again. And not that I've lost it, but just to reconnect with it. I am getting out of my own way now. It's not for me to judge whether something I create is good or not. Like it is an idea that I was given by whatever it is, the universe, call it God, whatever it might be, in that moment. And I saw John Bellion talking about this recently, where it's like you are like the vessel, you are the conduit for that, and all you can do is show up. And if you get an idea that day, then great, like you were meant to get that idea. And if you don't, that's fine too. I think that's another thing I challenged with, was like judging myself so much and just wanting everything to be perfect. And I think a lot of that goes back to my history in like music and jazz, and like my schooling, in that sense of like it being really strict, and just never wanting to make a mistake. The point is that you show up every day to be present, because I think a lot of people will say like, oh, you were just lucky, you were in the right place at the right time, and yeah, like, but if you didn't show up, you wouldn't have been in that place in that time. You know what I mean? Like, that is the difference between people who are successful in this and people who kind of just drop off. And I look at a lot of people who continued, like Kyle Beats, Aries, so many people that like just did not stop. And I have a huge amount of respect for them, because I know like everybody who does this ultimately goes through those challenging moments of like the financial side, just things in life happening. But like to be able to continue grinding through that is something that I just like, I had to learn over time. And maybe that's what these past 6 years was just a learning process for me. Like maybe I wasn't ready, at that moment. And that's fine. Like I'm still here, luckily. But I have a huge amount of respect for people who just naturally understand how to grind through that and figure things out, because that is the difference between people who are successful and who are not, is that they continue to show up regardless of how difficult things get, in any aspect of life. And that is a grit that some people are born with. It's something that might be a byproduct of, the environment they were raised in. And maybe it's, they had a mentor at some point, that, or somebody to look up to that showed them what that looks like. And I think everybody ultimately learns at a different pace. But I think as long as that's something that like you understand is the reality of things, is that, like you need to show up day in and day out regardless. That is what's going to make the difference. And so that's my goal, is to just like rekindle that fire that I had for this, and get back in touch with that side of me and see where it takes me. And hopefully, you guys will be along for the ride, because who knows what's going to happen. But yeah, I don't even know how long this video is going to be. I feel like I've been yapping for a long time, but so I'm going to wrap it up. If anybody has like any questions, maybe I didn't touch on something that you're curious about, or you want me to expand on something, like just let me know in the comments. And yeah, we're going to go from there. So again, like thank you to everybody who has remained subscribed and remained curious about like where I'm at. A lot of growth has happened in these past 6 years. So my goal is, and my hope is, that I can take that and channel it back into this channel and fill some of those gaps that I had back then that, are ultimately the reasons why I stopped. So thank you again so much. And yeah, I'm excited to see where we go from here. So with that said, I will catch you guys in the next one.